Good afternoon. Computer keystrokes, mouse clicks. These are the new tools of the international criminal. Our title, Cybercrime, International Concern, is significant due to the fact that cybercrime is international and expanding rapidly. Why should you care? Do any of you shop at Target? How about Home Depot? These two sources, along with hundreds of others, including a healthcare provider, Anthem Incorporated, have been targeted recently in attacks. The need for greater security is absolutely imperative no matter where or who you are. According to Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, 737 companies control 80% of the wealth in the world. That's a lot of money to be running around in the world, and even more data. As these multinationals tracking credit card info, social security numbers, and other private data that you would want to keep out of the hands of others. In addition, we have the Sony Entertainment fiasco, where the DPRK, or North Korea, attacked the Sony Pictures Entertainment as a retaliation for the movie The Interview, as it portrayed their leader, Kim Jong-un, in a negative light. Such an attack could have been prevented if nations had sponsored legislation that protected their people and their companies that call that nation home from attacks. The U.S. plan for protection centers heavily on business since we are a harbor of international commerce. If anything is going to be hacked, it's probably going to be hacked here or in another country big like us with technology such as Japan or even the EU. President Obama signed Executive Order 13636 on February 19, 2013, also known as the Improving Critical Infrastructure for Cybersecurity. This allowed the NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, a subsidiary of the Department of Commerce, to create a plan for security. Their plan is a set of baselines for organizations to assess and determine their cyber readiness. The framework stresses creating two profiles. One is a current, and the other a target. The current allows for an organization to take a dispassionate look at where they currently lie as it regards technology. The other is a plan on where they want to be, so they have a goal as to where they wish to go. There are 5 parts of the framework. Part 1 is threat identification. What kind of threat are we talking about here? Is it a worm, ring, Trojan horse? Protections. How will we combat this in our network? Detection. How will we know even when we see one? Response. How will we handle an attack if it's underway? And finally, recovery. How will we respond to the attack post-mortem? The flexibility of this framework creates its universality, as every organization and industry can set their own standards. Its ranks are tiered, with Phase 1 being the lowest, least capable for threats, and Phase 4 being called adaptive and most ready for not only the threats of today, but the threats of tomorrow. Since no legal legs exist, this could serve as a great springboard. The White House is considering using incentives, tax credits, or other motivation that would allow business to more readily adopt this. Congress may look to the framework for codifying law on the matter. Finally, private insurers would be very reticent to cover a company that does not meet minimum security standards. Data would be probably considered the same as any form of property. If you can't secure it and if you can't protect it, you're probably not that trustworthy for us to be giving you an insurance policy too. Now we're going to hand it over to Jonathan Collins, who will give you the European and Japanese perspective. John?
All right. When looking at the European perspective, the first data privacy laws were passed in Germany in 1970. While most countries around Europe, as well as Asia and other international countries, look at and consider data privacy and protection a fundamental right, this has been a very large part of the European Constitution, as well as Japanese legislation and other international legislation that we've looked at. Currently, no universal right to data privacy exists in the United States, yet it is something that throughout our research we've seen the Obama administration trying to fix, largely in part due to memory of Nazi rule, where everything businesses and families owned, including the individual's identification, all the way down to family and business information was taken. Europeans fear that businesses, as well as governments, they fear this mass collection of data collection as well. On January 12th, 2012, Viviane Reding introduced the European Commission's proposal for the right to be forgotten. This is a call for privacy and the withholding of information an individual might not want public on the internet. A decision was later reached that all European citizens had this right to be forgotten by data collecting services such as any search engine or social media site. This right to be forgotten means that if an individual no longer wants their personal data to be stored or accessed or processed by a data controller, and if there's no legitimate reason for keeping it there, then it should be removed from their system. In the EU, data controllers are obliged to protect the privacy of the individual, yet there's been a lot of debate as to what defines the individual's information as private and public, and to which data controller actually stores and keeps it. Data may be collected only if the express permission of the person or the individual whom the data is about is granted and the data is used for a specific and legitimate reason only. The e-privacy directive, enforced throughout the EU, it states that all subjects of data storage must be informed as to the use of the data by the controller, what it's for. Meanwhile, those subjects have the right to deny any use or distribution of that data. Controllers are not only responsible for removing such data or information when the subject requests its removal, but any copies distributed or given to any third-party sites. These data controllers also determine the use and the means regarding the processing of this personal information. E-privacy laws. EU laws state that for the e-privacy laws to take effect in the EU, the data controller must be based in the EU or at least using equipment within an EU member country. This applies to data controllers who use their data collection to promote advertising on their sites such as Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. These protection rules also apply to any entity that possesses European data, so even outside parties can sometimes gain access. One large example of the removal of such data would be since July of 2014, Google has seen over 91,000 different requests for the removal of personal data. One thing we looked at was Japanese privacy, and in Japan, businesses must specify the reasons behind their collection of personal information. This is something that they've started to change a lot. They're currently preparing to remodel a lot of their laws in response to new threats as well as the changing landscape of the international laws regarding privacy. That's one thing that we saw a lot of change in regarding Asian and European countries, yet it seemed to be something they were learning about based off of U.S. mistakes and past threats. Besides that, hand it over to Lane.
My portion of the presentation deals largely with the way private businesses have dealt with providing security to people. The IC3 here is a non-government organization that has been funded by the FBI and the NW3C. The IC3 acts mainly as an internet crime complaint center where people can go online and report instances where they have had their data or money stolen over the internet. The IC3 deals mainly with e-commerce. They partner with organizations such as eBay or Amazon, places where people send their money online, and they try to make sure that these companies are protecting the people's money and data properly. The IC3 also keeps record of all the complaints that they have received, and this allows them to have a database that they then share with law enforcement agencies so that they can try and become one step ahead of hackers as they deal with these attacks. Symantec is a multinational organization that focuses on providing internet security to private individuals and the common man. Their CEO, Michael Chu, states that automation is the key to internet security. Symantec manufactures programs that automatically check endpoint devices. Endpoint devices are where people access the network of companies, so your phone can be an endpoint device, your laptop can be an endpoint device. It's where outside things come into the network. and these outside sources can have viruses coming in with them. So endpoint automation is very important because it makes sure that the endpoints are up to date with their security and that the things accessing the endpoints are not containing viruses. The number of endpoints have risen because everyone has a phone these days. This is also why the number of threats will be increasing. There's just more people using the internet, and it's easier for them to access it at all times. Another new occurrence is that hackers have begun to target legitimate websites like Facebook and Twitter, things that people trust, and they use these social media sites as a sort of hub for their viruses, and they send them out to all the people that go to these social media sites. Kaspersky is now the largest software company in Russia, and their goal is to create the most effective, responsive, and efficient cyber threat protection. They believe that nobody should have to be in fear of being attacked by hackers. They are also one of the world leaders of the aforementioned endpoint protection. They are one of the top 4 ranked vendors for endpoint services in the world. Kaspersky also works with law enforcement agencies. They have helped train Europol police and City of London police to combat cybercrime, and they also work with other security organizations to conduct joint investigations of cyber crimes. To conclude, with the rise of technology, more people than ever are using the internet, and they're using it more often. This also means that more people than ever are vulnerable to cybercrime and hackers. So far, businesses and governments have generally been one step behind the hackers. They've been trying to mitigate damage caused by successful attacks rather than prevent the attacks altogether. In order for people's data and money to be safe in this global age, businesses and governments need to become more proactive and be one step ahead of the attackers. Thank you.